Hello there, friends and neighbors. You have reached Green Room on Air, and I'm your host, Ray Renati. And as you can see, I went to Cal. Are you impressed? I hope so, because I know I am. How many thousands of you are listening to this right now? If you're listening, please leave a comment down below and just write something. Hey, I'm listening. Good show, bad show, love you, hate you, just something. And press like also if you're seeing the video of this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the podcast, well, you won't be able to do that because you're not watching it on YouTube. But yeah, I'm doing this right now through this OBS software. It looks like I live in San Francisco, but I don't. That's a green screen. Isn't that cool? Yeah, you gotta love that. I'm not sure how to make it look perfect yet. I need better lighting. I have lighting here, but I don't know. I'm rehearsing for this play, Frankenstein. You might have heard of Frankenstein. Not young Frankenstein, regular Frankenstein. Regular old Frankenstein. It's the version of Frankenstein they did at the National Theatre in London about 10 or 15 years ago. I will be performing this in a few weeks at Ohlone College in Fremont, where I got an equity waiver as a student, because I'm now a student at Ohlone College. You see, I wanted to act, and we had COVID, and I am an older white man, and a lot of us aren't being hired anymore because of the way things are in the world. So, I'm doing a college production. And I love these people, these young people. They're so wonderful. I'm so happy I'm able to do this. I'm playing this guy DeLacy. I'm blind. It's the first time I've ever played a blind person on screen. Not on screen, on stage. And maybe the last. Probably. I'm surprised they didn't find an actual blind person. I hope I don't get in trouble for that. Maybe I'll have to pluck my eyes out before the show starts so that I don't get canceled, but because I wouldn't want that to happen. Hey, it's Columbus Day. Columbus has been canceled, and as an Italian American, I resent that. No, I don't. I don't care, actually. I'm not sure if Columbus actually slaughtered people like some people say he did, or if they just died because of disease, or if he really went in and slaughtered indigenous people. I'm gonna have to go look that up, because I don't believe everything. I believe very little that I hear these days. So if people tell me that Columbus slaughtered people, I'm gonna go, okay, let me check that out. I'm gonna check that out to find out if Columbus actually did slaughter people. If he did, that would suck. That would really suck, and I wouldn't want to ever celebrate Columbus Day again. Not that I have ever celebrated Columbus Day. One time I was going to direct a Thanksgiving play at my son's school. It is one of these free plays you can get in a kid's book. And, unfortunately the play was old and it didn't have a Native American in the play. And somebody came to the first rehearsal, a parent, and wouldn't let us rehearse. She actually wouldn't let us rehearse. And I said, well, we'll add a Native American in. We can do that. I mean, this is what do you call it when you don't have to pay for something ever again? Anyway, no, she wouldn't have it. So, I don't know. But you know what? I've been watching some great television. Handmaid's Tale, the 4th season. God, I love that show. Elizabeth Moss is fantastic. I love that woman. She's a great actor. Check her out. Handmaid's Tale. Great show. I found also a nugget on HBO called the Gemstones. What is this thing called? With John Goodman. HBO Gemstone. And they don't promote this show, and it's hilarious. And I don't know why. The Righteous Gemstones. Maybe you guys have heard of it. Let me know in the comments if you have, but I sure hadn't ever heard of it. The Righteous Gemstones. Yeah. Stars John Goodman and a bunch of other people I don't know, but it's about a family of evangelists, of like TV evangelist people. It's hilarious. It's really hilarious. It's on HBO. Check it out. You can stream it or download it illegally if you're so inclined. But don't do that. That's wrong. Today, our guest is part 2 of our guest, because I had part 1 out a couple weeks ago. Part 2, Ed Hooks, my good friend, actor extraordinaire for many years in Los Angeles, all over the television set. And now his expertise is he teaches acting to animators all over the world. He is the go-to man. And as I said in my last podcast, he's my friend, my mentor. I learned so much from him about acting and life and everything. And he's one of those friends for life, you know? And his wife is wonderful as well. And they're just great people. Let's see, do I have this? Now let's see, do I have this actually lined up correctly? I don't know. I just don't know anything anymore. Anyway, I hope this is going to look good. Tech is so hard these days. I mean, these people who do podcasting for a living, and they just work 80 hours a week and then just hope they get enough listeners to make some money. I mean, it's a lot of work, folks. Hey, did you hear that Kgo Radio? Oh, look at that. My little hand went out of the screen. Kgo Radio. I got to extend myself here. Woo, look at that. Woo, look at that. I can just move myself around. Is that something else or what? Let's see. Look at that. Let's see. Up. I got to go to the edge. There. Now it doesn't look okay. Yeah, Kgo Radio, which has been in an AM station in the San Francisco Bay Area for like 80 years. This conglomerate, I think from Florida or at Georgia or something, Cumulus, this big conglomerate, they own a bunch of radio stations. They just took Kgo Radio off the air in a moment. I mean, of course they'd been planning it, but they told no one. I think it was during the Mark Thompson show, for those of you who know Mark Thompson. And this is a great radio station. I have been listening to it since I was 10 years old. Literally, I'm 61 years old, and I have been listening to that station since I was 10 years old, almost every day. It's gone. You know what they did? They turned it into a sports betting talk show. Yes, that's what they did. That's what Cumulus did. Wonderful corporate America. All hail corporate America. We love them. Yeah, that's what they did, folks. This morning I was listening on Twitter. You know, they have like this town hall thing, and a bunch of the hosts from KGO were on there this morning, and they had a room through Mark Thompson's account. It was fantastic. So hopefully they'll be able to do something like that in the future, although I don't know how they're ever going to get paid, and I don't think they're going to want to work for money. I mean, these are professionals, they need to do this for a living, unless they're so inclined to do it for free. I don't know, but what a shame, just gone. This now their ratings have been down in the tubes for years because Cumulus gave up on them and stopped marketing, stopped sales. It was like they were like a loss leader. They'd sell a package of advertising, and KGO was like part of this. They didn't care. And KGO, if you don't know, that it's been a talk radio station for years, and it's been one of the most fair, thoughtful talk radio stations in the country. One of the most successful. It leans left, but they let everybody on. And they used to have right-wing talk show hosts. They have a couple syndicated ones, well, up until a couple days ago, that were right-wing. And but most of the local people are, Democrat or left-wing, or whatever you want to call it. But a lot of, Republicans would call, because these were intelligent talk show hosts. They're not like Rush Limbaugh and all those people, which is the problem. because that's what people want to hear: sensationalism, hatred, and all that. So it's a sad day. It's kind of sad for me. I mean, as I said, I've been listening to that station since I was a kid. There's Ron Owens, who, when he first started there, he was only on Friday nights, I think, and he used to talk about pop music. I remember, and they'd play the latest songs on the pop charts. So many great talk show hosts. I used to love Jim Eason years ago. Now my favorite is John Rothman. He's gone. The guy knows politics. He used to work for Richard Nixon. I listened to him almost every night. And Pat Thurston and Mark Thompson. And then there was Gene Burns, and then Bernie Ward. Oops, Bernie went to jail for being a pervert, but he was also a teacher in my high school. But he was good. Although I guess he was terrible to work with, but he was a good talk show host. And there was Dwayne Garrett, who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge because of financial problems. But he was amazing. He was a fantastic host. Anyway, it's gone. It's over with. No more KGO. Unless by some miracle they bring it back. I mean, it happened like years ago. Like 15 years ago, they did something similar. But they actually didn't trash the station like they did this time. It's gone. It's a sports betting talk show station now, if you can believe that. Oy, oy, oy. Anyway, that's enough for today, because we have part 2 of Ed Hooks.
When COVID set in, I stopped traveling. People stopped inviting me to travel. And so we set up this video instruction site with a very, very modest fee structure. It's $12.95 for a month, and you stop or start at any time. And we started making videos, and it's just me sitting on a stool talking into the camera. And sometimes I'm looking at this is split screen, and we're showing examples and clips and stuff, and I'm analyzing them. And it's the same subject matter that I cover in a master class. And I wanted to have it available to people who could not get to my master class, number one. And, people who live in, it's funny, I get people in very odd countries, and in Africa and all kinds of places, and they don't have access to what I teach. And so I wanted really to make it for them. And so we have on there right now 33 videos that are, they range in length from 5 minutes to 25 minutes. And it's a really good resource. And Callie, the point I mentioned it is because Callie does she's the chief cook and bottle washer, No,
that's very very interesting. So you teach the content of your masterclass online on Uscreen.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And
yeah.
So what is different about teaching animators acting than actors acting?
Well, it's two different art forms. Acting is a performing art form, and animation is a visual art form. And so the historically, going all the way back to the 1940s and earlier, what they do with animators who wanted to learn more about acting is they tell them, go take an acting class. And then the animator would show up in an acting class. But now the acting classes, as you know, are training people to be on stage or in front of cameras and to interact with an audience. Animators, most of them are pretty shy. If you try to get them up in front of people, they get really nervous. this was what I discovered when I went into Pacific Data Images, DreamWorks, when they were working on ants there in Palo Alto. And, half of the people in the class, after about 3 sessions, they wouldn't come to class because I was trying to teach them the same way that I was teaching actors. At that time, I really believed that there was only one way to learn about acting, and that you had to get up and act, like in scene study.
Yes.
And so I went in there and I assigned them roles and gave them sides and told them how to rehearse and doing little improvisations and all this. And it was a failure. It didn't work. And they gave me a PDI. Do you remember the guy, Ken Bielenberg, by chance? Do you remember a guy named Ken Bielenberg?
I think so. He was an animator.
Yeah.
Yes, I do
Except
remember.
I did not know at that time he was an animator.
Actually, I did a short film with him that he made.
Yes, that's him.
Yeah, okay.
And so what happened was, all the time that Ken Bielenberg was in that acting class in Palo Alto, I did not know, as I didn't know with a lot of people, you don't know what they do in the daytime to put food on the table. So it was one night after class in Palo Alto, we were out walking to our cars, and he said, listen, he said, I work for an animation company and we're making a movie. He said, well, we never made a movie. We only made commercials. And he said, I told him about you, and we were wondering if you would be willing to come and teach an acting class on site over at the studio. And not knowing any better, I said, sure. And so that's how I wound up over there with a box of scripts, and I was just going to teach them an acting class. And it laid a big egg. It didn't work. And yeah. And the human resources people took me to lunch and told me it's not working. And I said, I'm sorry. I was really embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know why it's not working. And they said, well, Ken tells us that you're a good actor, a good acting teacher, and we do believe him. And so if you want to try something else, if you want to experiment, we'll keep paying you, but you got to stop doing what you're doing. And yeah, and so I got the animators back together. There was about 30 of them. I got them back together, and I said to them, I said, look, I said, I think I know something about acting, but I obviously just don't know anything about animation. And I said, you got to show me how you do what you do. And I need to shut up until I understand that. And then maybe I can figure out some way to bring what I know in a way that'll be useful to you. And so they gave me a chair with rollers, and I went from animator to animator and sat with them while they were animating the movie. And then I had this big aha moment, which was that they did not have a present moment. Actors work in the present moment. And also actors work a lot on stress control, because it's very stressful to be up in front of hundreds or thousands of people and trying to be relaxed and natural and being in the moment. And so actors work a lot on sensory isolation, on focus, all this stuff. Well, animators, in the first place, they're not the actor. The actor is the animated character. So from the audience's perspective, the actor is Mickey Mouse, not Walt Disney. So the animator's relationship to the character is one of empathetic direction. So they look at the animated character like a puppet. And so this leads to a certain objectification that's a problem, because the animators then feel like they are imposing all of the acting, all of the acting moves on the character. And so I come along and I say, okay, you need to understand acting theory, but you don't need to be training to be in a movie with Robert De Niro. And so once I had that insight, I worked out a way to teach this with lecture discussion, and I reduced acting down to about 10 or 7 or 10 essential principles. And then I started showing clips from films to illustrate these principles. You know, when acting is right, it looks like this, and when it's wrong, it looks like that.
Would you show films with people or with animated characters?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And meanwhile, this was a learning curve for me because I didn't know anything about animation. I was a regular consumer. You know, I knew about Bambi's mother. I knew Dumbo. I mean, but I did not know anything. And here they were making this movie with Woody Allen, and it was computer animation. And it turns out that Ants was only the second computer animated movie ever. The first one was Toy Story. So it was just plain fool's luck that I wound up in there. This is not because I was so smart and I chose it. I fell into this thing. And then because I screwed it up, and because Ken Bielenberg, turns out he was in charge of visual effects for this movie. So he had a position over there. He wasn't just an employee. So they listened to him. All of this was lost on me. I can't take credit for any of this. I just went along for the ride. And it turned out, Ray, that nobody before me had tried to apply classical acting theory to animation. Nobody. There was no literature. There was no books. There was nothing. Animators had just been told, go take an acting class. And I right away figured out, because I screwed it up, no, I'm bringing the acting class in here and it doesn't work. They don't need that because they're not actors. And so because of my skill set, because I had been teaching for so long and had acted for so long, I was able to take my skill set and apply it to a new discipline. And I was the first one at the parade. So after that movie came out, I wrote the first edition of Acting for Animators, which I took it to my regular, because I had written 4 or 5 books, you know.
Yes.
I took it to my publishers and said, here, I got this book for animators. And they didn't want to publish it. Nobody wanted to publish the book. And what they said was, Ed, there's already a lot of books on acting. The animators can look at those books. Your book isn't special. And I said to them, look, these people are different. They don't have a present moment. They're doing something different. And what finally got the book published was an editor at a company called Heinemann in New Hampshire. This woman, she was a gay woman, and her romantic partner in life was an animator. And this story came back to me later on, is that it was pillow talk. She was telling her partner in bed about the submissions she had gotten during the day and whatnot. And she mentioned, yeah, this guy wrote a book for acting just for animators. And her partner said, oh, that's a good idea. She said, oh, really? Yeah, it's a good idea. And so Heinemann went ahead and published the book. They gave me, it was ridiculous. They gave me almost no advance. I think it was like $1,000, something like that. And for that, they wanted 25 illustrations. They wanted a CD-ROM. They wanted, I can't tell you all the stuff they wanted. And I gave it to them. Why? Because I had gone that far with this thing. And I felt like, okay, I'm just going to get it published. I don't care. I'm just going to get it published. And that's really what happened. And during that process, I had another piece of crazy fool's luck. And that was because I was learning about animation while I was writing the book and while I was working over there at PDI. I was looking all the time at DVDs. I was buying DVDs like crazy and studying animated movies, trying to figure out what they were about. And I got one called The Iron Giant. All right. And I looked at this and I said, well, the acting in this thing is really good. This is a really good movie. And I said, okay, well, it's easy for me to find movies that are bad. Here's one that's good. And so I need to make sure that the people who read this book I'm writing take a look at this movie, because here's one that they can look at and say, okay, this works. And so I did an analysis of, I don't know, 8 or 10 scenes in this movie. And I wanted to make sure that I hadn't said anything wrong about the analysis. And so I sent them to the director, who I did not know. I had no idea who he was. All I knew was the movie had been released at Warner Brothers. And so I sent this thing to Brad Bird, care of Warner Brothers, and in Hollywood, in Burbank. And as it turned out, that movie had failed at the box office. And Brad Bird, this was his first movie.
This is Iron Giant you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had been working on The Simpsons. And this was his first movie. And he really responded favorably to my analysis of this thing. And he contacted me and said, yeah, you've got this right. You know, what you've got here is good. And so I said, oh, I made a couple of adjustments there, character names and stuff. But the essence of it was okay. At which point I asked him if he would write a foreword to the book. He said, okay, sure. And he did. He wrote a short foreword to the book. And then when I sent him the manuscript, which included his foreword and everything, he also saw the artwork and he hated it. He did not like the cover of the book. He said it was amateur. And I said, look, they're giving me $1,000. And I've had to go to an animation student. I'm doing the best I can here, at which point he, by that time, had gone from Warner Brothers to Pixar. And so he told one of the artists over at Pixar to do a cover for me with no charge. And so somebody, I don't even know who did it, did the first cover at Pixar, because Bad Bird said, if you're going to go with this terrible cover that you've got designed here, I'm going to pull my forward out of here. I don't want to be in a book with a terrible cover like that. And so, yeah. And so that's how the first edition of the book got printed by Heinemann. And then it was pretty immediately, the response was favorable, just almost overnight. And even though this was the first thing, I became the go-to person for the topic of acting for animators. In fact, and here's one more thing to tell you, Ray, and then I'll get off of this because it's a hell of a story. I got into trouble with the director of Ants, who I never met in person. I still, to this day, had never met him.
You're kidding.
But he, after I finished with working on the movie, I had a CV, a little promotional thing that I put together, thinking maybe some other animated movie might want to hire me. You know, there's a lot of them in the Bay Area. And I said, somebody might want to do this. So I put together a flyer. And as a courtesy, I sent it over to them at PVI just to show them what I had done and to thank them for the opportunity of working on this movie. Well, the director called me up and yelled at me because what I had put on there was that I was a consultant for acting. And that's what I thought I was, because I was teaching acting, I was giving acting principles, and I was sitting with the animators while they were animating, and they were asking my opinion about scenes. What should the character do here? What should the character do there? I thought that that's what I was doing, but the director thought I was
there. Okay.
Yeah. So I thought that I was a consultant for acting, and I didn't mean to make this guy angry. But it was it was a fuck up. And so I said, okay, well, I'll call myself something else then, if it bothers you that much. And that's when I made up the term acting for animators. It didn't exist, this term. And then I went ahead and bought the domain name. Nobody had ever done it. I was there. And so then I had actingforanimators.com. That became the name of the book. And I was off to the races. That's how all this started. And it became the tail that wags my creative dog. And so by now, this was 20 years ago. And by now, yeah, Ray, I've been in over 35 countries, and there's been over 200,000 students, animation students. I've taught all over the place. And now the book is going to be in it's in a 4th edition right now, and it'll soon be in a 5th edition. And it's published by Routledge, which is a very big educational publisher. And so that's the story of how this came to be. But I cannot take, what's funny to me about it is that I can't take any credit for it. All I can take credit for is that I didn't walk away from it. Yeah. Because I didn't know what I was doing. And they gave me the opportunity to experiment. And I could just as easily have said, thanks, but no thanks. This is just not for me. But there was something about it that I knew was exotic, all this business with animation. And I recognized that there was an opportunity there. And it turned out that that's exactly what I was looking at. And that's why nobody's ever been able to copy me. There's been all kinds of people that have tried, they've set up acting for animators classes, but they make the same mistake I did, which is they try to teach the animators like actors. Yeah. They get them up doing exercises and stuff. It's acting class stuff. And it may be fun, but it doesn't teach them about structure. It doesn't teach them the connections between thinking, emotion, and physical action. It doesn't teach them action in pursuit of objective, overcoming obstacles. It doesn't teach them what an objective is. Acting exercises are really designed to relax and to focus stage actors. That's why Viola Spolin invented these things. Yeah. And so when people bring in other teachers, that's usually what they get. And I just I'm in a niche. Is that the word?
Niche. I think you can say it either way.
Yeah. Anyway,
it sounds to me like what it reminds me of is after I've been reviewing the history of Stanislavski. When he first started, he he kind of treated his actors as though they were puppets.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think he backed off of that because he got so many people angry and they quit and had nervous breakdowns and things. But it doesn't hurt if you do that to little animated characters.
Yeah.
So they're more.
Well,
So it sounds like you're training them in the principles of acting, but they're actually sort of the directors of these characters. And
yeah.
they need to understand what good acting is, but they're more the director of it. They're not the one who
It's
actually is
right.
doing it.
But one of the things that's happened with computer animation, if you contrast, if you have you got somebody there?
No, I just had to check my screen.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
If you contrast computer animation to hand-drawn, old traditional animation, the kind of stuff they did with Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig and all this, those early animators, the early Disney animators, were really like animation directors. They had a sense of authorship. Many of them created the character in the first place, and then what they would do is they would animate this one character from the beginning to end of a story, from the opening credits to the end. In the world of computer animation, there are half a dozen people in the pipeline that have their hands on character performance before it gets to the animator. And this next edition of Acting for Animators will be the first time I've really taken this on head on. But in the pipeline, the typical pipeline, whether it's a computer game or whether it's a movie, the animator doesn't usually start until they have a character rigged, what they call rigged. And this is where they put all those control points, thousands of control points. They first make the puppet, then they take pictures of it 360 degrees, and they put it into a computer, and then they rig it. They put the controls in there so that you can control eyelids and eyebrows and fingers and hands and stuff. And then they give it to the animator. The problem is that by then, number one, there was the screenwriter. Number two, there were storyboard artists. Storyboard people have a lot of control over what characters do. Then you've got the dialogue recording. In the United States, they record dialogue first. This is the reason why you go to an animation studio and all the animators are wearing headphones. It's because they're listening to dialogue, and then they're making their animation fit the dialogue. Mm-hmm. Which, number one, gives a false impression. It makes it seem like the words are the most important thing. And of course, they're not. Our sense of sight is more powerful than our sense of hearing. This is one of the things I teach them, in fact. But you've got the dialogue recording, and they've had their hands on the performance of the character. You may have had motion capture, performance capture. There's all kinds of stuff that happen before the animator gets there. And a lot of times the performance in the broad strokes of the performance have already been established. They're baked into the cake. And this is different than it used to be with Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner, where the animator could call all the shots. And so what needs to happen, and what I'm doing with the 5th edition of Acting for Animators, is I'm trying to expand the readership and my student base to include all these other people. I'm telling them in this book that they need to get everybody on the same page, that it is not enough just to train the animators about acting. They need to have the storyboard artists and the dialogue recording and the motion capture directors. Everybody needs to understand acting theory.
Yes. At
least on a basic level. And so that brings you up to date on where I am with this thing. It's been I continue to learn, I continue to develop, and during all this, the industry itself, the technology has become more and more sophisticated. They're doing virtual reality now. They got all kinds of stuff. And I have been there at this party. It's and so I come in, and what I am is an authority on acting theory. And so since the days you and I worked together in scene study, I have been forced in a way to study acting in a way quite different from the way I did when I was simply teaching acting to actors. I understand the theory of it now in a very fundamental way, going all the way back to Aristotle. I mentioned this to you before. For me, actually what I've done is I have gone through the same process that Stanislavski went through. And I figured out a lot of the same things that he figured out, but I figured them out on my own. So most times when acting teachers are teaching classes, they'll cite Stanislavski as their source. I don't. I almost always will cite Aristotle. And because that really is it. It's really it. Stanislavski codified some of what Aristotle said for theatrical purposes. Also, Stanislavski was, he wanted to do what, Eleonora Duse. You and I have talked about Eleonora Duse.
Yes, I bought that book about her. I haven't read it yet. It's sitting there on my pile of books.
Yeah, called Duse.
Yeah.
And that's a very good thing. Are you familiar with Delsarte? Delsarte?
I've heard the name. I can't remember exactly what it really is.
He was a French 19th century. He was born like in 1811, 1812. There was him, and there was a guy in Italy named Moretti, I believe his name was. And these guys, they were really like the first acting teachers. And this was like 1840, 1850. And what they did was they worked out poses. So if you were having a scene where you were supposed to be upset or distressed or angry, they would tell you, you stand this way with your feet here, you put your right hand over your chest, and exactly.
I've seen those old books with those pictures in them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the most famous actor of the day was a woman named Sarah Bernhardt.
Yes.
And she applied a lot of this to her work. She was very theatrical, very with theatrical flourishes and poses and all this. And then what happened was Eleonora Duse came along, and Duse was self-taught. She did not go with Delsarte and Moretti. Her thing was, she found the power in silence, in stillness. And so she would make the audience wait. She would stop. And she could control an audience with stillness, with silence, moments, filling a moment with thought, with emotion. So she became the antithesis of Sarah Bernhardt, the opposite of Sarah Bernhardt. And the two of them became great competitors. Well, during that period, Stanislavski and his fellow young actors, they were just in their 20s at the time, when Eleonora Duse toured Russia, they saw her work and were blown away. And they did try to talk to her about how she did what she did, because it was a mystery. Nobody had ever done this. How you do this? And she probably because she didn't know how she did what she did, because she was self-taught, but she wouldn't tell him. At any rate, she wouldn't tell him. And whether it was because she felt like she was a great actress and didn't need to talk about these things, at any rate, she wouldn't tell him.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why they set up the Moscow Art Theater, Nemirovich, Danchenko, and Stanislavski, was they were going to try to figure out a naturalistic kind of acting like Eleonora Duse was doing. And so they started all these experiments with emotion and stillness and all these things. And that's how they got into Chekhov, who was a new playwright at the time. All of it fits together. All the pieces to this puzzle start coming together. And then Stanislavski's people went to New York, and that's where they were picked up by Strasberg. And he turned it into the method.
Yeah.
And what happened was, over the years, Stanislavski changed his mind. So if you, about it, he first thought, when he first started, he thought that if he could get the emotion right, that the correct action would come out of that. But by the end of his career, he thought that if you commit fully to the pretend circumstances, play the action fully, that whatever emotion is supposed to be there will be there. He totally reversed himself. And this is the reason why, when people ask me about what books to read, I now tell them, read this one, this new one on method. I mean, it's as good as any I've ever read. But but don't read Stanislavski, because number one, he was a bad writer. He couldn't write. And number two, he changed his mind.
Yeah.
And so you'll just get confused.
Right.
If you start reading Stanislavski, because he says one thing in one book and another in another.
Yes. Yeah. So at first he was trying to codify how to bring about specific emotions, because those were the ones that he thought were correct for the moment in the performance, whatever it happened to be.
Yeah.
And later he said, could commit yourself to the circumstances of the moment of the play, and whatever emotions come out are the right ones, if they come out at all. And then the audience will buy in. It doesn't matter whatever they are necessarily.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, to tie this in with animation, and by the way, we're about to come to the end of 1 hour. Are they going to cut us off?
No, I paid this time, so they're never going to cut us off.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, be sorry. No, it's fine. It's just like $10. I didn't want that happening again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to connect a couple of dots for you here. In the early days of animation, back when you had the Disney people making a cartoon like Steamboat Willie with Mickey Mouse and all, they believed that if you could make an animated character express emotion, seem to have emotion, that was good acting. And so that's the reason why you get so many of those cartoon characters that are over the top emotional.
Yeah.
Now, Walt Disney, because they did not have literature, the only thing that was available for a short time was the Boleslavsky book. But animators, what they did was they copied the silent films, and they copied vaudeville, and they copied the English music halls. And that's the reason there's all that slapstick in those early cartoons. So this is something that has been a holdover that goes all the way to the current day. There still are a lot of animators, and a lot of them are directors, who believe that if you can make a character seem to have emotion, that's good acting. I have come along. One of the things that I brought to this party is I've tried to get them to understand that acting is not actable. I mean, the emotion is not actable in itself. You can't act emotion. that emotion tends to lead to physical action, and that acting is doing. So I tell them, no, you should be able to ask your character what your character is doing. And that if you have an emotion, you're probably going to do something about that emotion. So if you have the emotion of fear, for example, you may confront the thing that's threatening you. You may run away. You may get your pepper spray out. You may look for a cop. All those are actions that are motivated by the emotion itself, but you don't act fear.
Right.
And in those early cartoons, if a character is afraid, you see their knees knocking together and their teeth chattering. And so this is the world of animation that I am in currently. So a lot of these people, this is new information for them. They still think that emotion is actable.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, some of those old ones, I do like them for a while because it is over the top, and it is kind of amusing to watch these old, especially like the original Bugs Bunny, the old ones where everything is absolutely over the top. Sometimes it's really violent, which I could never really understand. What's all that extreme violence in the early animation? What's that about?
Slapstick, because they don't pay the consequences. Say, you get a character that gets an arrow shot through their head and they don't die. It's
just a fade away, and then they're back and they're healed.
Yeah,
like Roadrunner or Daffy Duck.
Roadrunner's a very good example. That's one of my favorites. Wile E. Coyote, his thing. I call these characters single adjective characters. Myself, I just made this up. But like Donald Duck is his default emotion is anger.
Yeah.
He gets angry at everything. Doesn't matter what it is. And he gets almost apoplectic. And with that, and in fact, I tell the animators, I say, look, if you were to freeze frame Donald Duck in the middle of one of those anger fits and ask him what he's doing, he probably wouldn't be able to tell you because he's too angry. But you need to know that he probably is frustrated because he's not being understood, and probably his objective is to get people to listen to him. That's probably what he's doing. But what we see is him going apoplectic.
A friend of mine from grammar school, or elementary school, his name is Tony Anselmo. He's the current voice, I still think he is, of Donald Duck. Mel Blanc took him under his wing and taught him Donald Duck.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually a difficult thing to learn, to do it perfectly. It takes a few years.
Oh, sure.
With tons of practice, yeah. So he's the voice of Donald Duck currently, and I guess he's probably teaching one or two people how to do it so it can get passed on. Because they never want to lose the correct Donald Duck.
I couldn't do it. I took in my acting days in Los Angeles, I took a voice class with a woman named Joni Gerber. I believe Joni Gerber is dead now, but I took her. She had a house up on Mulholland Drive, and I sat there in her living room and took this class. And she was very successful. That's why she lived on Mulholland Drive. Yeah. She was very successful doing cartoon voices. And I remember sitting on the sofa and watching this woman create the voice of a gerbil. Okay. And she had a microphone there and she created the voice of a gerbil. And after she had done that, she created the voice of the gerbil's wife. And it was different than the gerbil, but it was clearly another gerbil. And then she continued by creating 3 gerbil children.
So amazing.
And each of them were gerbils, but they each of them were different than the adult gerbils. And she did all this while I was sitting there watching. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to be able to do that. And I knew that I'm never going to be able to do that. That is a very special talent. And people now, you know, I get people to ask me, oh, I want to do cartoon voices. How do I do it? How do I get into that? And I just generally tell them, you know, good luck. Because there's a very small handful of people that do the most of the work because they're like Joni Gerber. And they can do that. They can create 5 characters in a half hour and have them all be of the same family, but each one of them distinct. And it's a real skill.
It's a very real skill. It's difficult. And the thing that I think is so difficult about it is they have to remain consistent. They can't blend into one another. And then they have to be able to recreate them maybe week after week and remember exactly how they did that character the week before. And it has to be exactly the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
When I used to stand in the kitchen, I live in an Eichler without walls, and my kids used to watch cartoons all the time, animated shows. I would be listening, and I would hear the same voice actors over and over again. They would do different characters for different TV shows, and they're all slightly different. I could tell it was the same actor, and every week, every episode, it would be exactly the same, and it would never blend into the other character from the other show.
Yep.
And that is so difficult to do.
Of course it is.
Yeah, and that's why there are so few well-paid voice actors. Because
not only that, Ray, not only that, when you do on-camera work, people are there all day.
Yeah.
When you do voice work, they have to rent a recording studio unless they've got it on site, you know, at a studio, at a you know, on a movie studio or something. But they do this by the hour. You show up for a voiceover job or to do something, and maybe they're going to be in there for 2 hours, maybe. And the people that are really good at this are able to just some of the direction that you get is it's almost otherworldly. You'll get direction because the directors don't often know how. They'll say, one of my favorite directions that I received ever in a voice thing was a director said to me, can you pick it up, Ed, but keep that intimate quality. And it's like, okay, well, you know, more energy, but keep that intimate quality.
Yeah, and it's all voice. It has nothing to do with anything physical.
Yeah.
Although you need to do things physical, but no one's going to see it.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you can answer this because it's something I've always wondered. Like when you watch one of these big Disney films, and then one that comes to mind immediately is Robin Williams as the genie in Aladdin. Are the animators watching him on a video as they animate? Because the character has so much in common with Robin Williams' actual physicality. I always had the feeling that they're seeing his face and they're replicating whatever they see while he's doing the recording, because so much of it looks like Robin Williams.
Yeah, and the answer is yes.
Okay.
The animator who did Aladdin, I forget his first name, but his last name is Goldberg, and he's a Disney animator. And I have met him on multiple occasions at events. As a matter of fact, I had dinner with him one time. He sat next to me, and we talked. Anyway, they absolutely, when they have people, these celebrity. Here's what it is that it contrasted to Japan. In Japan, they record the voices after the animation. And they don't use voice performers as celebrities as marketing tools. In Hollywood, you don't need celebrity voices. There's plenty of people who could do the voices. but they use the celebrities, Tim Allen and all these people, because they're promotable. Tom Hanks, and then they put their name over the. So a lot of people think that the characters are just a product of those voiceover performers, which is really not true. But yes, they videotape the voiceover recording sessions, the dialogue recording sessions, and they absolutely refer to those. They use them as what they call a reference, video reference. So they don't trace it. They don't do, the word for tracing it is called rotoscope, and they don't rotoscope. They don't trace it, but they use it as a reference. And not only that, a lot of times those voiceover recording sessions, like the one with Robin Williams, a lot of that was improvisation, and they just kept it. They put it in the movie. I taught a couple of times at a studio in Connecticut called Blue Sky. And they had Ice Age. They did a movie, Ice Age, and Horton Hears a Who. Okay, so I was teaching there. I had a room full of animators, and we pulled up a copy of Horton Hears a Who to take a look at this thing. And the movie had already been released, and I was just going to go back over some of the work on it. And Jim Carrey did the main voice of Horton in there. And so we're watching this movie, and there's a jungle scene, and up in the trees, there's some monkeys, and the monkeys start taking bananas. They pull the bananas off of the tree, and they stick the bananas under their armpits and then start doing this.
Yeah.
And so it shoots the banana fruit out of the peeling like a machine gun, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this, at which point I paused it. I paused the movie, and I said to the animators, I said, why are they doing that? And one of the animators said, oh, that was something that old crazy Jim Carrey came up with at the voiceover session, at the dialogue recording. And I said, really? They said, yeah, he did it, and we just thought it was fun. And I said, so you just kept it in the movie? And they said, oh yeah, I kept it in the movie. And I said, do you understand that this is not theatrically valid? That what you've got there doesn't have a structure. There's no action objective conflict. It's just a gag. It's a gag, and it's funny because it's a gag. And I said, I lecture them. I tell them, you got to do less of that kind of stuff. You need to have structured scenes, and don't just put stuff in there like that. But this is typical, and it answers your question about the influence of the voice people. They have a lot of influence, especially if they're stand-up comics, and they go, they start, what they do is they get at a voice recording session and they start entertaining, doing a bit, they do an act.
Yeah.
For the people in the control room, is the director, the producer. Excuse me.
Sure.
So what they do, they start doing an act for the people in the control room, and everybody feels like, oh great, aren't we all big time?
Could you have the big star Jim Carrey squirting the bananas out of his armpits? Oh, we got to keep that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a keeper.
Yeah, so I see a lot of this.
Yeah.
And Eric Goldberg, that was his first name. Eric Goldberg. He's a pudgy little guy, looks like Porky Pig. And yeah.
Eric, if you're watching, we love you. Okay.
Yeah, Eric Goldberg.
Oh,
and he likes to dress like a cartoon character.
Oh, really?
So he's all the time wearing very colorful outfits, and he wears suspenders,
Yeah.
Eric Goldberg, and the suspenders have Disney characters all over them. So he walks the walk and talks the talk. He's a sweet man. You'll find him if you Google him. You'll find him all over the place on the internet. Eric
Yeah.
Goldberg.
Okay. Oh, I see him here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen this guy before. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot. He shows up at festivals. That's why I've known him, because I run into him at festivals, and so I'm not a good friend. We don't hang out, but he knows me and I know him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I see here he has his animated shirt on and his suspenders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all extremely interesting. So I have a question about this Japanese animation. My son is really into this Japanese animation. I don't get it. I don't get why people like it. I forget what it's called. What is
Anime.
this? Anime. What's the deal with that?
Well, it came from comic books. And the comic books are called manga, manga.
Mm-hmm.
And so really, anime is like comic books that move. And that's the reason why there's so much stillness in anime, as opposed to Western animation, which is the characters are always gesticulating. Anime demands more of an audience than Western animation. Because if you think about it, like a comic book or a graphic novel, they'll show you a painting, a drawing of an image, a situation, and you sort of complete the acting in your head when you look at this. So what they've done is they've moved this into an animation, but there still are these comic or graphic novel frames, one after the other. And this causes the audience to have to do a lot of the work. And in Western animation, you just don't get that. They spoon feed you.
I see. Maybe that's why my son likes it.
Yeah, and also they're more willing to be adventurous. They're with the anime. A lot of it is a lot of science fiction stuff. They're very big with the horror genre. They show a lot more violence. With the Western animation, because they're trying to separate the audience from their money, they're careful not to scare children too much. I mean, even Walt Disney was not afraid to scare children, but today's stuff is so watered down. It's so bland. Most of the Hollywood, they spend $200 million on a movie, and they don't want to offend anybody. And what they'll do is they make a movie, and whatever worked in the previous movie, they'll make sure to put stuff like that in this one. It's really, it's a whole big, I get on a soapbox about it.
What would be an example?
An example of
like a watered down movie that could have had more conflict or more graphic.
Almost any of the Pixar movies you can take.
I mean, like Frozen and movies like that?
Frozen, sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In Frozen, let's take Frozen. Frozen has an antagonist called Hans of the Southern Isle. And that character has no foreshadowing in the movie. So 15 minutes before the final credits roll, that character steps up and he says that he is a sociopathic murderer. And he has been ever since he first arrived on the scene. And what he wants to do is to kill Elsa and take over the kingdom. That's been his plan all along. So and this is 15 minutes before the final credits. So we've watched the whole movie. So what I did when I saw this, I had the DVD and I went back and I looked at every scene that character was in, even if he was standing on the periphery, even if he wasn't the main one, because this means that all this snow and ice interrupted his plan. He had a plan, is what he said. But if you look at that character, he's just a rag doll. Now, I have learned that the reason for this is because they changed antagonists in the middle of production.
Oh.
So in the beginning, you know, the whole Frozen is based on the folktale, The Snow Queen. And it really is supposed to be a competition between those two sisters. And the original antagonist, and the way it worked in the book, The Snow Queen, was that Elsa was the antagonist. And I think the Disney marketing department got a hold of it or something and said, no, we can't do it this way. And they were already halfway through the movie and they changed to Hans of the Southern Isle. This is another big difference between Western animation production and Japanese, that they do this. They start production on these movies, these big movies, before they've even got a complete script. They did the same thing with the movie Up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you think about it, that movie is a hybrid. It's the first half of it is for adults and the second half of it is for children. So turn back the clock. Walt Disney said, I don't make movies for, he says, I make movies for the child in all of us. So when you watch a movie like Snow White or Pinocchio, ones that were made under Walt Disney's reign, you regress. When you watch Snow White, you become like 10 years old again. Same thing with Pinocchio and Dumbo and all. You become young.
Yes.
It's almost impossible to watch those movies with an adult mind. But now you take a movie like most recent one from Pixar is called Soul. And this is pretty much adult stuff until they get to this other world, which is a pre-life world where babies are assigned their personalities and stuff. And at which point the characters become all appealing to children. In the movie Up, the first half of that movie deals with love, falling in love, courtship, marriage, trying to have a family. They find out they cannot have children, so they make other plans for how to spend a life together, things they're going to do. They do spend many years together. The wife gets sick and she dies, and then the guy, the Carl, is grieving, and all of that is for adults. Little kids in the audience, they don't have any. They don't have the knowledge base to appreciate all this stuff about mortality and life. But then what happens is the house gets lifted into the air with all those balloons and it floats to South America, to Paradise Valley. And here comes the talking dogs and the bird that eats chocolate and all this stuff. Now, all of this is for children.
Yes, yes. Wow.
So what you've got here is a hybrid. The first half for adults, the second half for children. And why do they do it? Because they're spending $200 million. You don't need to spend $200 million to make a movie, especially with the technology as it is today.
So they spend $200 million because they want to be able to attract children and their parents. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
So they have to justify. So they have to justify the amount of money. So they have to bring in everybody. You know what?
Not only that, Ray. Here's how it works. The guy the head guy at Disney, he gets on the phone on Zoom, and he talks to the people at Wall Street, the analysts, and he gives them the projections for the Disney company, which includes Pixar. And he tells them, we're going to have a movie that's released in April, and then we'll have another one that's released in July, and then we'll have another one released in September, he's going to say, or how does it work? He's going to give them release dates for the next couple of years.
Okay.
And for Wall Street, this means good news. Okay, we're going to keep having a lot of movies, a lot of revenue from the Disney company, and the stock goes up. And this justifies the head of Disney. He collects a paycheck of about $65 million a year. Okay, that's what the president of Disney gets, 65 million.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So he's okay. So then what happens is they don't have movies to fit into those slots that they've announced dates for. So really what should happen is you should have a story to tell, and then you should figure a way to make a movie out of this story. You should, but the whole industry in the United States has to do with stock prices. And they don't even look at movies as movies anymore. They look at them as content. And they try to get here. One more thing to tell you. They before there were streamers, this is before Netflix, before all of that. The way that movies, you would take a movie, a live action movie, and the rule of thumb was that a movie had to make 5 times its cost in order to break even. So if a movie cost $1 million, it had to make 5 million at the box office. Now, why? Because when you go to the cinema and you pay them $10 to go see a movie, $5 of that stays with the people that own the cinema. And the other $5 goes back to the producer. And then they have to pay for marketing, and they have to pay for prints. If there's prints, they have to pay for, they might have actors that have profit points. They got all kinds of stuff. They got overhead, they got this, they got that. And so the rule of thumb is that a movie has to make 5 times its cost. All right, fade out, fade in. You're spending now $200 million. This means that a movie has to make $1 billion if it was just box office. Well, you're not going to make this at the box office. So what do? They have theme parks and merchandising and lunch boxes and T-shirts and towels. And then what they do is they call these movies tent poles, and they split them off and they make a Broadway musical out of them. And then they have the music track, and then they have the stage play. They get all of this. Then they have a sequel or 2 or 3.
The McDonald's Happy Meals.
Yeah, McDonald's Happy Meals. And so all of it is a big merchandising behemoth.
I see.
And
wow.
the movie becomes fodder for a huge merchandising enterprise. That's what Hollywood is.
Oh,
that's what it's become.
How sad.
And let me say one more thing about this, because I'm sorry, this is a big deal with me. I teach in acting that artists are shamanistic, that your heritage as an actor goes back to shamans, it goes all the way back to Mesopotamia, nomadic tribes. The shamans have always been important to tribes, and the shaman's job is to help the tribe survive with their sickness, if there's celebrations, if there whatever is going on, if there's bad weather, a storm, a tornado. What the shaman's job is to be a connection between this tribe and the various gods or whatever. They become like a combination of a preacher and a doctor and all kinds of things. Well, I believe that this is the heritage of actors, is that your job is to talk to the tribe, to help the tribe survive. The problem I have with Hollywood is that they're not trying to make the tribe survive. They're trying to get the tribe to get its wallet out. And they're very good at it. And meanwhile, all you got to do is turn on CNN for 30 minutes and you realize that how much trouble the tribe is in.
Yeah.
And I know that this sounds idealistic. I appreciate that maybe I have my head in the clouds, but this is the reason why I teach. This is what causes me to keep going to teach actors and animators. And I tell them that they have a mandate to help the tribe in the same way, even that a religious figure has a mandate, that when you're telling stories, remember why the audience is there. They're there because they're looking for survival strategies. They're looking to see how this particular character deals with some situation, whether it's external, whether it's internal, and then whether the character may succeed or fail, but they're going to try. It's just like sitting around the campfire when we were primitives and talking about the hunt. It's the same deal. That's the structure of movies. And that's the reason why your audience is there. And I hear people say, well, I make the movies to entertain. And I tell them, no, forget that. We are hardwired by nature already to be entertained by storytelling because it's essential for our survival.
Yes. Yes.
And your job is simply to be good at it. And I spend so much of my life trying to sell this particular message to artists. And I tell them that being an actor or being an animator is not just something that's fun to do, but it actually is an honorable way to spend your life. But you need to understand what your mandate is. And your mandate is to help the tribe. You don't need to sell them stuff. And so this is an important supporting point for everything that I do. It's a supporting point in my books. And I get frustrated with the commercial world.
Well, just so you know, maybe this will make you feel better, but you used to tell us that all the time, and it sunk in with me. And honestly, every time I am involved with anything, usually a play, I always think about that. Like, what is the story we're telling, and why are we telling it, and how do we want our audience to be affected, and what do we want them to learn? Like every time I go on stage, like even if I'm having a bad day,
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, I can't. How am I going to go out there and do this? Say, this isn't for me. This is for the people out there. This is my gift to them, however it comes out. And I'm going to
see, I love to hear that. I'm so touched that you connect me in any way with that kind of motivation. And well, I there really is. It's very touching to me. It's very moving. And I appreciate and admire that you do that. And I believe that is the most productive and correct posture for an artist.
It also makes it easier for the artist because we're human. People don't realize, we think people objectify you, of course, when you're up there or on the film, but you have to be able to do it no matter what state you're in.
Exactly.
And often when I've told myself, like when I've been ill or something, it's like my character, the person I am right now and the person that's going to be on stage is ill. People get ill. I'm human, and I'm going to tell this story in whatever way I can, and I'm going to
exactly.
And that's also relief. That's a relief. That's a relief. Huge relief. Yeah,
it is a relief, and also it's another perspective on this is that the politicians will tell everybody why this group of people is better than that group, why this country is better than that country, why this God is better than that God. That's what they do. But it is the artist's job to tell us why we're all the same. that all of us, all humans everywhere in the world are exactly the same.
Yes, that's true.
You know, everybody's born the same way, everybody dies the same way. You got different cultures, you got different habits, you got different things, but we all are born with the same capacity to express the same basic emotions. And we each of us have our own individual strategies for survival that reflect our values. Emotion is defined as an automatic value response, and it reflects your values. That's why one person will be afraid of heights and another person won't. You've got different values. Both of them have the emotion fear, but they are afraid of different things because of their values. And your job as an artist is to understand the character that you're playing. Don't judge them. You know, everybody is the protagonist in their own life. Every character is the protagonist in his own life. There is really no such thing as a villain. Right. Not in the world. Villains don't think they're villains. They think they're heroes.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a villain so frightening, because a villain's choice of survival strategies may include murder or thievery or some kind of terrible thing, which becomes now a problem for other people in the tribe. And so your job as an actor, as an artist, is to understand why the character that you're playing is behaving like they are. It's justification. The script tells you what the character does, and your job is to come up with a reason why. Mm-hmm. It's just as simple as that. It's all about justification. Every human action has a purpose. So you're saying, what is the purpose in this moment? What's my purpose? I need to have a purpose. What Stanislavski brought to the party, I think, his biggest contribution that's lasted is that he became more script centric. He came up with the idea that you could take a script and divide it into bits, and each bit had its own standalone structure, action, objective, obstacle. And so at any given time, a character should be in the middle of some bit. And you say, in this moment, what is the character doing? And as soon as they complete one bit, then they immediately go to the next bit. And then you add all the bits together and you've got a whole script. You've got a whole story.
Yeah.
You know, when you work in there, objectives and super objectives and all of this. But to me, that was the main thing that Stanislavski did was the script analysis.
I agree. I mean, for me personally, that's the part that helps me the most when I'm working on a character. The whole thing about super objective and backstory and all that, I'm not saying that they're unnecessary sometimes, but I haven't found them as helpful as just working in the moment with whoever is on stage with me, reacting to them in the moment with a knowledge that I've already worked on about what is happening in that moment. Although I'm not thinking about it anymore once I'm performing, because you can't be doing that either. It has to be in your body and in your mind.
Yeah.
But in turn, I think super objective and all that is good at the beginning, just so you understand the piece, so that you know why it's there, what its purpose is, what the story is trying to convey to the audience. But when you get on stage, you're not going to be thinking about those things.
No, I like it as super objective myself. Is that a super objective is why a person will become a doctor rather than a ballet dancer, or you know, it has to do with how you become fulfilled as a person. And a lot of times I find super objective can explain a character's behavior when it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yes.
Especially when you see characters that are obsessive. A lot of times a super objective is the only thing that'll explain it. One example that I use, I don't remember if I've ever used it with you, was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was born poor. He was basically trailer trash, and he worked his way up in the world. He became a Fulbright scholar. He got into politics. He became the governor of a state. He became the president of the United States for 2 terms. The president of the United States, probably one of the most powerful people in the world. And what did he do? He tossed all of this away in order to have a fling with Monica Lewinsky. And you say, why, if you were acting Bill Clinton, how on earth do you justify that? Do you just say he's horny? Well, if he's horny, he has plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of women for a powerful person. If you want to go, you don't need to be doing this in the Oval Office with an intern. You see?
Yeah.
But his super objective, Bill Clinton, all of the power that he had and as a politician with the governor and being president and all of it, all of that power still did not make him feel good as a man. What he needed to feel good as a man was Monica Lewinsky on her knees, you see.
Yeah.
And there's no other explanation that makes any sense why he would have risked his whole presidency for this silly fling. And it was a silly fling.
Yeah.
He never was serious about her, but she adored him. According to her, she adored him. She really believed he was going to leave his wife and marry her. And she was 18 years old or something. So it's the point is, only a super objective could really explain why Bill Clinton would have done that.
Right.
Because his regular work, although it's full of objectives, was not scratching a certain kind of a primal itch. And anyway, that's just
no, and that's great. And like, if you're working on a character or you're trying to understand yourself as that character, that's something that you would definitely want to take into account, and it may color how you play certain scenes or say lines on stage. But in the moment, you're not going to be thinking about any of those things. It's like the work you have to do before.
In the moment, you're going to be in Stanislavski's beat.
There you go. Yeah.
In the bit.
Yeah.
See?
And you fed yourself this other information before and let it percolate in the back of your mind and your subconscious or consciously. And
exactly.
Then when you're finally doing the role, those things will hopefully show themselves unless you block them.
Exactly.
You know what, one movie, going back to what you said before about these Disney films often having like, or these big budget films having, the first half is for the adults and the second half is for the kids.
Yeah.
There's always been, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because there's a movie, and I had some friends back when this movie was made. It was Wall-E, who were involved in it, and that movie was so much like that, and it stood out to me as I could never understand it. I mean, the first half of that movie I love. It's so sublime and sort of dark, and he's alone and he's wandering through this vast world of nothing. Everyone's
Yep.
dead and we don't know why. And it's so incredible.
Yep.
And all of a sudden it becomes this stupid thing with obese people in wheelchairs in a spaceship.
Exactly.
Like, and then they lost me. It's like, oh man, I just don't like this movie anymore. But the first half, I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite animated movies.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
And this is why Hollywood has been very slow to actually do adult theme feature animation. The Japanese have been far ahead on this. I think that Pixar changed the whole industry when it brought in computer animation with Toy Story. Pixar, with movies like WALL-E and Up, had an opportunity to do it again, to actually change the whole industry again. And by then they were a cog in the Disney machine.
Yeah.
And they backed away. And that's the reason why you had these hybrid movies. You're right about WALL-E. First half of it, marvelous. Second half of it, stupid.
Yes.
It's because it's hybrid.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I'm still not clear about the hybrid thing. So they want to cater to both adults and children.
Exactly.
But beyond that, they want to create a marketing machine where you can go to McDonald's and sell Happy
That's
Meals and get a Broadway show and sell the music, like Little Mermaid, for instance. I have never seen the
Exactly.
film, but I feel like I know everything about Little Mermaid.
Sure.
And because, being in musicals, all these young women, they sing the songs from Little Mermaid. They grew up with Little Mermaid. They wear Little Mermaid t-shirts still, even though they're 25 years old. So that's what they're looking for. And then the adults will bring them in because there is some adult content in there that will keep them from being totally bored and not wanting to bring their kids to it.
Well, what they do is they, if you look at the character design of a lot of these movies, the characters are designed to appeal to children. They have their eyes are too big, their waists are too little. They're colorful. There's a lot of stuff about them which is really designed to be what they call eye candy.
Yeah.
And but adults don't care as much about eye candy. They care more about relationships and that. So really the whole thing is about, in Hollywood, is about justifying spending that much money, because they're not going to spend less than that. They won't spend less than $200 million on a movie.
So you said that you can now, with today's technology, that's not necessary. Are there people out there making independent animated films that are good that we can find?
Sure. There's a lot of them that are really good. And also now they're starting to make things like animated documentaries. This movie called Flea, out of where was it, Denmark, which had to do with it was nominated for Academy Awards in 3 different categories. It was for Best Feature, Best Documentary, and Best Animated Feature. It got so this is a whole new genre.
Okay.
Animated documentaries. The guy in Israel, Ari Folman, he did a movie called Waltz with Bashir, which had to do with Israel's fight in Lebanon. So it was a similar thing, a documentary. But these you don't have to spend. I mean, I think that Flea cost, I think it was, what'd they say, 3 million, 4 million, something like that. You don't have to spend $200 million. You can make a very good movie for 1 million, for 5 million, if you want to really, you don't have to do it. But the Hollywood is such a, they're so addicted to the merchandising, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Now, Flea is an animated film?
Yep.
I wonder if this is the one I'm looking at IMDb right here. Barry Williams voices Barry Williams from what was the TV what was that show when I was a kid in the 70s?
Well, it's called Flea, Flee.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. It's a different. Okay, Flee. Oh, okay. Ah, I see. 2021. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Interesting.
And it had to do with
Wow.
a guy. It had to do with a guy who's gay and how his family got out of Afghanistan
Ah,
with the Taliban and all of this. And he had to develop, he had to lie. He had to lie about who he was. So the movie is all about the Afghanistan struggle, the emergence of the Taliban, and this guy who was struggling with his own sexual identity and orientation, and they mix it in with the animation, and there's also mixed in there clips from actual newsreel footage now and then to keeps it anchored in the real world. But it's an animated documentary.
this looks wonderful. It has a really good rating on IMDb too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so does the Ari Folman's movies that I would recommend to you. Waltz with Bashir is a very good movie.
Waltz with Bashir. Okay. I want to check these out.
Yeah. I mean, and if you want to go to the extreme here, without even doing the computer animation, there's a movie that came out of Brazil called Boy and the World, which I adore. And this movie was made with 35 animators, and it cost $500,000 to make. A man named Ali Abreu was the director of that.
What was the name of that one?
It's called Boy and the World.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You really have to hunt for these things.
Yeah. And Boy in the World, I have personally shown that movie all around the world. And I did an analysis of it and sent it off to Ali Abreu, and he approved it. But that movie, they'll make their money. I mean, I think movies should pay for themselves. It's just a matter that I think to get into the business or the industry with the prospect of living in Malibu is really kind of crazy. It's just not a reason to be an artist.
No, and we have the age of social media and TikTok and Instagram and all, and people now see that as a reasonable goal to become a celebrity.
Yeah, of course. Of
And
course.
It's still not reasonable.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't serve humanity. Like
Right.
you say, I've always approached this as, this is not something to become famous with. This is an art form, and I will express it as in whatever way seems to be my path.
Sure.
But it's always in your mind, though. You see, and I notice I'm influenced now by the world and the way it's become. I often think, have I done enough? Have I done the right
Sure.
thing? Should I have moved to LA? Should I have moved to New York? I didn't. I couldn't. I had kids. Did I blow
Yeah.
my chances? And I have to say, I mean, I never used to think that until the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, when the social media thing has become huge. I'm
Yeah.
trying to eliminate it now from my life as much as I can, because I think it's insidious.
Yeah.
It can work its
Yeah.
way into your subconscious and you start to think that's the way
Well,
reality is.
what they've done, and it's another subject, it gets away from acting, but
Yeah.
I believe that what they've done is they figured out how to monetize anger and fear.
Oh, yes.
Because
Absolutely.
let me just say this about this, is that humans are like other kinds of animals in that when we're threatened, we have a deer in the headlights reaction. We freeze. when we don't know exactly what the threat is, we have to figure it out. And there's a moment in there when you freeze. And this freezing trait is what they're capitalizing on with Facebook, with all these other social media. And it causes you to not click away. It causes you to stay.
It's an alarm. It creates an alarm in your body.
Yeah,
Like, I need to do something about this.
That's right, but you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It just creates fight or flight, and you freeze. And then what they do is now they got all these people that are not clicking away from the site, and then they sell the presence of those people to advertisers. So what they have a motivation for agitating their customers, for keeping their customers in a fight or flight position of reaction. And to me, this is a terrible drift in not only in the American culture, but this is international. And I see it as one of the major problems is that we've monetized fear.
Yeah. Even the news organizations, I mean, all of them, it seems like CNN's trying to get back to being real news, but it's, I don't know. Hopefully things will get better.
Yeah, we hope.
Yeah. Wow, this has been such a great conversation. I love this, Ed. I mean, I just love talking to you.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think yesterday we were talking, we were rambling around a bit. I do think, and I said in an email to you, I think you've got an editing job to do.
I know. Well, this one I think was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you edit this, I think what you got out of the 4 hours that we spent together, I think you've actually got a good tight 2 hours.
Yeah, I think so. It's just a matter of now sitting down for 6 hours and doing it. Yeah.
And once you get it done, let me know.
Okay.
And there might be something I can help do with this.
Okay.
To get the word out, because I think it's useful for you and I to be talking about stuff like this.
I think so. The only thing is, I find that I really enjoy doing this, but there are so many podcasts out there,
now
millions, that to get like a listenership is so difficult.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
it
becomes a full-time job just to get people to listen.
Yeah.
And I don't do that.
I know. And it's a motivation. See, this is why you get so many of them that try to make fear and anger.
Yes. Those are the popular ones.
That's right. Because they cause the most eyeballs.
Yes.
Yeah. When they solve that problem you're talking about.
Yeah.
People like Alex Jones and all them. The conspiracy theories. And by the way, did you know that there's a name for, there's a word called apophenia? Do you know this word?
No.
We, us humans, in addition to being problem-solving creatures, we're pattern-seeking creatures. We make patterns even when there's not patterns.
Yeah.
When you get it, actually, the world itself every day is pretty much chaotic, and we look to make patterns all the time. There's a lot of research on this, and we make patterns even when patterns don't exist. So this is why there are some people who are convinced that 9/11 was an inside job.
I have a friend like that, and you can't convince him otherwise. He thinks I'm crazy for not believing that.
Exactly. They're convinced of it. And why? Because they see patterns.
Yes.
And the word for this, for people who find patterns where patterns do not in fact exist, the word is a medical word called apophenia.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Apophenia.
So, apophenia. is what you call this when somebody finds patterns that don't exist.
Well, we all do it to some extent. It's a matter of like, are you recognizing it when you're doing it to an extent that is like ridiculous? I think that we do. I think we all do that to our own detriment sometimes. Like, I know sometimes like if I'm feeling off or whatever, my mind will start going back in the past and trying to figure out what it is that caused this, and I'll come up with reasons.
Sure.
And then when I really think about it, it's like, I don't know if that's I mean, that's just my brain trying to make sense of something.
Well, that's what your brain does.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
Is that your brain does this all of the time. Even in your dreams, your brain does it.
Yes.
It is part of being human.
It's amazing. It's totally amazing.
Yeah. We seek patterns.
There's a new science fiction book out that I want to read. I don't remember the name of it, but it's we as humanity come into contact with some advanced life form out past Pluto on some spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
But this advanced life form doesn't seek patterns, doesn't have self-awareness. We assume that our consciousness is what makes us who we are and makes us the most advanced animal on Earth.
Yeah.
And this novel apparently challenges that to a huge extent and is somewhat successful, whether it's true or not. But I really want to find this book. I don't remember the name.
It's an interesting premise.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I love about. That's actually what I love about acting, and is we as human beings have this problem. We are self-aware, and the arts, and for me particularly theater and good movies, attempt to not answer the question, but, as you say, dramatize our situation in a compressed way. I don't remember the exact words you used.
Exactly.
To help us overcome our own confusion, pain.
Sure.
Whatever.
Existential angst.
Yes. And to me, it does a better job than most religion.
Yeah. It's the same thing. It's a religion and theater are the same.
Yeah.
In this regard. Both of them looking for ways to help the tribe get through the dark night.
Yeah. Well, this has been the greatest conversation I've had in like years. I could listen to you forever.
Well, it's a real pleasure. It's a real delight for me to spend time with you. It really is. And we should do it, more often. It's just talk about stuff.
Absolutely. Let's do this on a regular basis, and maybe we'll become famous. No.
Sure. I would like to. We'll wind up making a movie.
Yeah, maybe. I'd love to come out to Lisbon sometime. I mean, we go to Europe we used to go more often, but we want to go more again. Katie's brother and the rest of her family is still like all around Paris and Versailles. So we go out there. I was out there last summer, but it'd be great to visit you there.
Sure, come on out. It's Portugal is once you get past the passport line at the airport, you're in good shape. It's Portugal is we've been here for 5 years, and it's a very interesting country because it's both old and new at the same time, because it was under kings and dictators until 1974. And then there was a revolution. Now it's formally a socialist government. But the country really, if you start counting from 1974, it's trying to figure out even now how to govern itself.
I see.
And because it was under kings and dictators, it was a very poor country. The kings and dictators took all the money. So the people that lived here, the Portuguese people, learned how to live for, 10 cents on the dollar. And that's the reason why Portugal became such a good value for expats. They could come over here and reduce their cost of living from the United States by 50%, and live a pretty good life in a Mediterranean climate. It's not a bad place to be. And the cost of living is going up, you're getting more people, but it still is, compared to the United States, it's something quite different. You don't get gun deaths here.
Oh,
You don't get gun deaths. You don't get a lot of drug overdose. They've decriminalized drugs. Not made them legal, but they're decriminalized. So you don't go to prison for drugs over here. They catch you with drugs, they're going to give you counseling. They consider it a medical problem, a health problem. So it's a whole, also that they think healthcare is a birthright. So medical, they say that it's got about the 7th best medical system in the country, in the world, Portugal, and it costs less than half of what you spend in the U.S. So there's a lot.
I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, I don't know the guns, the drug issues,
Sure.
we go that, in Silicon Valley here. I pretty much only shop online for groceries, like on Thrive, or I go to Costco. You go to Safeway now, I mean, it's going to cost you $6 for a loaf of bread.
Really? Yeah, it's terrible.
I know.
I
even noticed when I was in Europe last summer, France isn't very cheap. France is kind of expensive. But then when we went down to Italy, I was like, wow, I could live here and
sure.
spend half the money I'm spending at home and get good stuff.
Sure, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. You can get really good stuff. I mean, here it's a Mediterranean climate, and so there's a lot of produce, a lot of fruit, a lot of good things that grow around here, and they make bread and cheese, a lot of cheese. It's and the wine is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And wine here, that you spend $6 for a bottle of wine that would cost $35 or $40 in California.
Wow.
Yeah, really good wine.
What am I doing here?
And we never even knew about that. We never thought about the wine when we moved here. And I never really thought about Portuguese wine. And when I've discovered here was because the Portuguese people drank it all. It was
they kept it all for themselves.
They kept it all for themselves. And but once you see this, I mean, it's they've got like a whole bunch of kind of grapes that only grow here. And they've been around for 100 years and more, the wines really are quite good.
Wow.
And but it's we rent here, and we're now paying $1,700 for rent. We started at $1,200. It's gone to $1,700. But in Culver City, when we lived in Culver City, we were paying over $3,000, and
wow.
every month for rent. And so I mean, the cost of living is, we don't have to have a car. I mean, a car, that right away is another $10,000 with gas and servicing and all the things that a car. We don't have to have a car. We just Uber around or walk.
Did they have good public transportation?
Yeah, I got good public transportation, and then there's Uber. You could go from one side of Lisbon to the other side for, $5, $6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uber's expensive here now.
To get to the airport from where I am,
Yeah.
costs $12, $13, something like that. Yeah. In an Uber, you see?
My son has to go over to De Anza College tonight, and one of our cars is getting service, and my wife's going to be away, and I don't have a car, and I guess we have to send him on an Uber. It's like, well, that's going to be expensive. I mean, it's going to cost like $35.
That's right. That's right.
And then it's like going to cost like $50 to $70 for a round trip.
Yeah.
To go to one college class.
Yeah, exactly. So here it's really, there's so many ways to save money, and that you can walk every place, and and plus the fact it's scenic, it's historic. I mean, Portugal is the oldest country in Europe, and
Yeah.
I walk underneath every day when I go for my power walk. I walk underneath the Roman aqueduct that's here, and this sucker is over 300 years old. It's older than the United States.
3,000 years old?
300.
Oh.
One.
The Roman aqueduct?
There's one here.
But it's more than 300 years old, isn't it?
They're older than that too.
Oh, okay.
They're around. We've got all through Portugal. You've got ancient stuff. I just say this particular aqueduct,
Okay.
I think, dates back 300 years.
Oh, okay.
But all the time, there's everything on the street is old. The buildings.
Yeah. That's what I love about Europe. I mean, here old is like, let's visit this historic house built in 1820. In Europe, like half the people live in houses built in 1820.
Sure.
My brother-in-law, right in front of his house, he has a big like gated thing that opens up automatically, but on the street is a bridge that Napoleon built, and it says it right. This bridge, yeah. Now it's kind of covered over with concrete and stuff. You can't even tell it's a bridge anymore. But there's a little plaque. This is the bridge Napoleon built when he was attacking whatever army, I don't know, to get to the other side. And the creek is almost gone now, but like directly in front of his driveway.
Yeah. And it's nice, it makes you feel more anchored.
Yeah.
I remember when we lived in Palo Alto, there was a house next door to our apartment, and they tore the house down and built a new house. And while they were building the new house, I went over and talked to the workers, when they were building the house. And one day I asked them how long they expected the house to survive, to be there, this house that they were in the process of building. How long I said, when you build a house like this, how long do you expect it to be here before they tear it down and put another house up? And they said, oh, probably 50 years. 50 years. I mean, really, people wear shoes older than that here.
I know. Well, I live in a house that you could tell they didn't expect them to be here that long. These idlers, I mean, they're just put on a concrete slab. There's no subfloor. There's no attic. And they're all still here, and we'll have to jury rig everything now to get it to keep working. They were not built to last.
No, not built to last.
I like these areas in Paris. You can walk down, and here is the apartment where Robespierre had his idea to chop off everyone's head. And here, it's like, and there's people living in these places.
Yeah, I like that stuff too. I really do.
Yeah. Oh, well, should get going, I guess, here.
Okay, my friend.
Thanks, Ed.
You're terrific. We'll do it again soon. Let me know when you got this thing where we can do something with it.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Ed.
See you later.
Take care. Have a great evening. Bye.